And search is one of those stories. It's about trying to provide a more efficient and effective organisation. And we suffer from all the things that Jeff was talking about earlier. We had 19 odd branch offices. They had large Lundia filing systems, the 7 or 8 foot high jobs that rolled along the floor on rollers. We had paper for Africa, and we had a very physical view of information from our legacy. Combined with that, we had a number of incompatible IT systems. We had all the usual sorts of things and file shares as well. And we needed to be able to find stuff. So we were having problems just finding stuff. We had stuff everywhere. We had email, we had intranet, we had shared files, which were one of our major places where stuff was kept, and those were entirely up to individuals to manage. So we get into that problem of 20 choices about where to put something, and 20 places to go and look to try and find it. We had semi-structured data. We had a lot of spreadsheets lying around. We had a lot of databases. We had 3 different reporting engines, 4 different databases, 3 different directory services. It was a bit like Noah's Ark, and we were trying to find information across that stuff. We didn't have a classification structure. The desktop was the filing cabinet. We didn't have metadata, and we certainly didn't have search. So we needed to go boldly where no one had gone before. We needed enterprise search. The problem was it's so easy to say, we need enterprise search, but what does that really mean? Well, we know it's not web search, and we know it's not search of our own website. It's what we do inside the organisation. But the question is, what were we really trying to do? It sounded so easy initially, it sounded so packaged, it sounded Google. But was that really the answer? We needed to understand what our objectives were. We needed a skilled crew to help us. So what was our problem? Well, our problem was discoverability. If you've got 5 people in your local office, then discoverability isn't much of a problem, unless you're a lawyer perhaps, in which case you might be suffering from lawyer's desk syndrome. But 5 people, you can generally find what you need. But when you've got 400 people or 4,000 people, and they're scattered all over the country, then discoverability becomes a problem of a different order altogether. For us, it's a 2 million document problem. So by world standards, that's not really a big problem, but by our standards, it was a pretty big problem. It might be a legal problem. We often couldn't find the original contract that we'd signed, and we sign a lot of contracts in a year. It might be an information problem, staff trying to find out how they should do something, or it might be a policy problem, how can I do something, should I do something, when should I do something, or it might be a simple filing problem, can you find me the memo that I signed 2 months ago? And the answer was usually no. So we had all of those usual problems, and an interesting symptom behind that problem is that people are often reluctant to ask. So if you can't find something, chances are someone will guess what the answer was, or they'll make up for that deficiency of being able to find the original document by trying to recall it or make assumptions about it and so on. And on a single basis, that is not so significant perhaps, but when you multiply that syndrome through hundreds of staff every day through an organisation, then you're starting to have a very subtle but significant impact on the effectiveness of that organisation. It's starved of the information that it needs to make high quality or good decisions, so it starts making a lot of suboptimal decisions, and it's very hard to see that. But there's more. The Public Records Act arrived, and the Public Records Act was a government initiative to ensure that government organisations could store and find and dispose of, where appropriate, the documents that they kept. And it was probably a very timely piece of legislation, because times were changing in terms of documents. So we were rapidly moving along with the rest of Wellington into an electronic world. and some of you may have remembered the National Archives and National Library are trying to work out how to create digital repositories of all our archives. So you can have a piece of paper that's 100 years old, but the problem is it's in the Turnbull Library in Wellington, and it's very hard for school kids to get at and from Whangarei. So we're going to digitise all that legacy, make it available to historians, bring history alive to children through and researchers through the country. But then you put that all into digital media, but what do you put it on? 3.5-inch floppies, 8-inch floppies, disc formats, tape formats. About every 2 or 3 years, the format base completely changes. So the idea of making a digital archive of something and then being able to find it 100 years later is very challenging. The Internal Revenue Service in the United States ran into this. They had all their records kept on tape drives that IBM had end-of-lifed, and they couldn't read any of the tapes in their archive libraries because they didn't have any devices to do it. So there was a hundreds of millions of dollar panic to go back and reformat all that information into current terms. Now, when you put a document management system in, it's usually done with the assistance of your records management team, and your records management team have a very security-focused view of the world. They can often have a very narrow view of the world. They are after some specific goals, and those specific goals aren't necessarily the ones that users would prioritise about the characteristics they would like to see in a document management system. So they will configure the system so that it's very secure, and that's fair enough. You need to make sure your payroll records are secure. You need to make sure that your chief executive's correspondence is secure. You need to make sure that your legal department has confidence that their work is private and so on. All of those things are important, but they tend, all of them, to create walls, and you can unwittingly create some fairly significant walls in the way you implement the security structures around the repositories that you implement. So we needed a way to make sure that accessibility was maximised in that, and also that when we built this feature to support our compliance around records management, that we would be able to integrate that system well into the other systems that we had. So we were going to install enterprise search, but now we have to get to the question of yes, but how? There are lots of roads to enterprise search, there are lots of products, and there are lots of design architectures and considerations that are in the mix. We had a fixed investment. We are not a large organisation, 291 people. We might have a lot of money that we write for educational providers, but we have a very small amount of money that we can use to support our own internal administrative services, and we had to find a way to be more efficient with what we had. So we needed to decide where we were going to place our investment. Some of those issues were we going to buy servers and were we going to invest in configuration? We already have a significant IT shop. Why not buy another 15 boxes and put them in a rack? We've got lots of IT people down the end of the floor somewhere, so we'll give them another set of toys to play with and off they'll go. And I'm sure they'd be very happy to do that. Do we want to handcraft result sets? There are quite a few products on the market. Some of them offer extensive capability around handcrafting not only how they look but how they work. So for some organisations that might make sense, but for an organisation our size, we were not looking to invest in that end of the spectrum of value that we had to choose between. So we decided that we were going to place our investment around maximising the user experience, and I was specifically looking for an investment that would give me a low total cost of ownership. So I was prepared to invest in a project to make search successful in the organisation, but I wanted a very thin tail on it. So I didn't want cost continuing to accrue to the product. I didn't want 3 people to feed and water my search engine for the rest of my career. So we had some goals. The first one was that we had recently built an intranet, and we wanted that intranet to be our go-to place in the organisation for people to find the things that they needed. And this was a very universal perspective. If you needed information, there was one place you went in the organisation. So we spent quite a bit of money redesigning and refactoring and building new internet architectures in our intranet, and we wanted to bring traffic to that site, and we wanted those visits to be successful. We wanted our intranet, which is called Tuia, to be our information broker. So we chose to invest in maximising our search experience through our intranet. That's where we placed our effort. So we knew our landscape. It was very siloed. We had customer relationship management systems, document management systems, shared file systems, you name it, we had it. And a lot of those systems had their own search engines. So you can search through your mail, as you know, you can search through your document management system, you can even do quite interesting searches through Microsoft Explorer to look over your shared drives and so on. The problem is if you've got 21 silos, you've probably got 21 searches. So to start with, that's not a terribly efficient way to find something, because it means you have to search 21 different times, and also you have to search 21 different ways, because all of those search engines are different. They're all built to do different things, and they've all got different capabilities. So you could type exactly the same phrase in those different silos, and even if the source material was in those silos, you wouldn't necessarily find it in all of them using that same phrase with that same search engine. So there's an efficiency problem there, there's a usability problem there, there's a discoverability problem there, and we wanted to bring all those together and integrate them. But before we did that, we needed to understand that we've got two quite distinct customer sets. And it was an interesting discussion for our architects and our web design crew. Firstly, we did not want to destroy the value that we already had on our intranet, so we paid a lot of attention to our intranet architecture. We still wanted to be able to find things in a structured way. We had that was the traditional way people found things, and we didn't want to undermine that. So firstly, we had an audience of navigators. These are the people who would rather work their way through a structured approach to finding information than by finding search. So those people have had opportunity to use search, but they prefer to use a structured approach. So we wanted to make sure that we supported those people. In our organisation, they tend to be more structured thinkers. They have a structured approach. They have certainty in their values around the way they go about doing things. And if you want to be ageist, I'd have to say they're probably our older employees. Right? But then we've got searchers. Now, searchers are generally our Gen Y employees and moving up. I'm a searcher, I'm not Gen Y, so it's not entirely true. But they want reach and relevance. And I have to say that the internet search products have taught them some pretty bad habits. They're lazy. They're lazy because they've taught to be lazy. Why have they been taught to be lazy? Because the search engines on the web are very, very good. And you can find what you want with 3 words in the first result set. And that bar is set there. And we've got 20,000 people out there in one company trying to make search better every single day. And we're trying to emulate an experience like that inside our organisation and not doing a terribly good job. So the bar is very high around expectations. They want that search result, they want it now, and they've been taught that they can find it easily, and they expect to find it easily. And they're used to being instantly gratified when it comes to looking for things. The thing that is worth mentioning about this is that at the end of the day, people are looking for ease of use. They're looking for easy default behaviours. We're looking for them to be compliant. But the way that search works, the thing we want people to do is we still want them to see that little bit of magic. We want them to see exactly what they need right there every time. So we chose Google.